Hey everybody out there, this is Seto, and today guys we are going to talk about something that I touched on in my previous video that I did for you guys a couple of days ago, and that is how internet has changed the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now this is a topic I've really never seen anybody really discuss. They talk about it briefly, but they never go into detail, and that's something I want to go into. Talk about it, discuss it, things of that nature. For better or for worse, internet has changed the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Whichever way you think of it. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? One of the good things about Yu-Gi-Oh! And you have to remember, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been around since the early 2002, 2001, when internet was there, but it wasn't widely used by everyone. Everybody didn't have an iPhone. Everybody wasn't plugged up. We didn't use the phone for the most part was still a separate part of our body. We didn't have things like Facebook. We didn't have things like MySpace, if anybody still uses MySpace. YouTube was not around. Dueling Network wasn't around. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a completely different animal in the beginning, in its infancy. And I would say that in some respects, the internet helped Yu-Gi-Oh! Come to the masses of people. It introduced it to the masses of people and a whole bunch of other things. I think in a way you could also say the internet did that, as well as the kids anime show Yu-Gi-Oh! But for example, let me just give you some examples of how internet has changed the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, back in my day, even though I'm only 24 years old, back in my younger days, I guess you could say, when I was 16 and 14 years old and whatnot, we used to get these price guides. Now, some of you guys, older players out there, may have remember seeing these things. They came out from Beckard, and this is how you got your Yu-Gi-Oh! Information. Becker also did, I remember it did Pokemon stuff too. But it did Pokemon, Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Pretty much that was the main things it did. But it had price guides, it talked about Yu-Gi-Oh! All the cool decks that were topping. This, for the most part, along with chat rooms like Pojo and whatnot in its infancy, those were how you got your Yu-Gi-Oh! Information outside of your locals. That's how you found out. YouTube wasn't around. You couldn't just go to YouTube and just watch videos about a certain deck. You had to go on Pojo, go to these discussions on Pojo, or read them up in books. And I'm just going to give you a price guide of how crazy some of the prices were back then. So from, just a little quick recap, in October 2006, Smashing Ground as a common was going for $6 to $10. Cyber Dragon Super Rare was going for $30 to $45. And Dark Magician of Chaos, which was still legal, was going from $28 to $52. Those are the cards right there. That's just a little nostalgia trip. But that's how you got your prices. That's how you got your Yu-Gi-Oh! Information. Yu-Gi-Oh! Forums like Pojo and whatnot. Once in a while, Pojo would put out these big books. And this book is a book that you guys seen in my background many times. It says Pojo up in the corner there. But this was like an annual thing Pojo did. They would come up with these different type of decks, talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Just pretty much the entire book was Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's how you got your big Yu-Gi-Oh! Information. And that is how Yu-Gi-Oh! Started out. It wasn't something you could just easily find. If you were playing Yu-Gi-Oh! You couldn't play online. You couldn't try out new decks. You could proxy cards in, but you would have to go to locals to try those decks out. You couldn't just click online and just refine your deck like on Dueling Network or on Dev Pro. No matter which one you use, especially Dueling Network, because that was the first. You couldn't just refine your deck and play with different people, get different playing styles, just talk to people live, one-on-one. Dueling Network did that. It gave the ability to the average player not to spend money on just buying cards and playing decks that could just be, they wouldn't work out. You were taking a gamble because you just didn't know if this deck was going to come together properly. So you maybe have wasted money. While with Dueling Network coming out, you could use your money more wisely. You could say, does this card work in this deck for me? And then you could buy the card. You could find out about cards that nobody had heard about in a while. And pretty much Dueling Network gave another thing to me personally. It added to my arsenal was I could pretty much look up any card and read the card text. I didn't have to go on Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki and just look up every single card when it came out. I could just go on Dueling Network and get things like that. And it changed locals too. Internet changed locals because before the internet really took over Yu-Gi-Oh! Or really helped propel it with Dueling Network, locals was your main form of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Locals, or you would get the Game Boy Advance, the Game Boys, little Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds or GX World Tournament Series, like little teeny games you would get. Like on your little DS. This is not it, but things like this. That's the two main ways you played Yu-Gi-Oh! And honest to gosh, I know a lot of older players did this. If they got like their old Game Boy Advance games with stuff like that, they would test decks out on those games before they brought the cards, just to play around with new cards that had come out in the last year. That's how Yu-Gi-Oh! That's how we used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Locals was your bread and butter. Locals used to produce, if you had a good locals, it produced good players for the most part. That's was your Yu-Gi-Oh! World, was pretty much your locals, and then you had regionals, and then you had these big events that you heard of, like YCSs, but actually that was before YCS times. That's back when like Show and Jump had its own tournaments for Yu-Gi-Oh! But that's a different story for a different day. Another thing in that how internet changed the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! For us is knowledge and tactics and sharing this information with other people. YouTube did have a part in this too, but YouTube didn't come around until I think the late 2000s, early 2008, my high school years. But YouTube, there wasn't really no big Yu-Gi-Oh! YouTube players in the beginning. It took like a year and a half for YouTube to really catch on, and then you start seeing Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos coming around. I remember the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Video I ever saw on YouTube, I think, was in like 2009 of my senior year, I think it was. And I was like, oh my gosh, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is on YouTube now. I don't get this. This is crazy, man. And it really introduced a broad spectrum. I think, in a way, YouTube had its own responsibility because it brought the huge community of Yu-Gi-Oh! That is around the world, be it the OCG, TCG, things of that nature. Our European friends who play Yu-Gi-Oh! In Europe, it brought everybody a little closer together. The internet has done that, but it brought everybody a little closer together, Yu-Gi-Oh! Because you could talk with people online, you met friends through YouTube. That's another way how Dueling Network and Yu-Gi-Oh! Worked. But it also, like I was saying a second ago, which I'll go back to, is it helped expand the knowledge and tactics of how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! I think in some regards, some not so, but some, for the most part, it helped create better Yu-Gi-Oh! Players. Better, well-rounded Yu-Gi-Oh! Players. With the advent of the internet being more influential in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it made people be able to share knowledge, tactics, how to play the game, and things of that nature. And like I said, YouTube really had a big part in helping expand the player base and in Yu-Gi-Oh! So tell me, guys, down below, how do you think the internet has affected the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And until next time, guys, take care, have fun dueling, good luck dueling, and I'll see you guys all next time. And I just thought this would be an interesting topic to talk about, how the internet had influence on the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout the years. And plus, I would also add that it made the price of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards go up, too. It had an effect on Yu-Gi-Oh! Prices as well. But till next time, guys, I'll see ya. Seto Kaba, I'm out of here, guys. Till next time.